What does success look like? First, emotion. Language, everything. Next is second. Commitments, implement motion. This is a food. Every
But we are starting right.
started by Brazil.
Yeah. Yesterday, and the news man, that camera was on.
I saw a few online. I don't want to comment. You know it is. You need to watch
All
this.
unplugging angles that I pregnant mom.
No.
Hi everyone, thanks for your patience. We're going to start in a couple of minutes.
What it should be. Right here. This is.
Thank you so much for bringing us to that practical. And it's now my pleasure I'm sure they'll give you an extremely warm welcome and it's been a pleasure to have you here.
The Wall Street motion, leadership in and around the international project process. Just call it
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining. First of all, I would like to say this is a very airy room, so I'm very happy as breeze. And Brother, thank you so much for coming down. I don't want anyone to be discouraged by the number of people here in this room. A lot of people have emailed us saying, because trains were cancelled and it's hot, and I absolutely understand. So what we have done here is we are also live right now, so people can watch this, and still we are making sure that the message is getting out there. Okay, so I'm going to kick us off. On behalf of the London Clean Energy Roundtable, we welcome you and thank you for joining us today here at the Marlborough House, Commonwealth Secretariat. It is a privilege to see so many representatives from government, industry, academia, academia, civil society, international organizations, and youth communities gathered together in one room for a shared conversation about the future of energy transition. A few months ago, this was simply an idea, a series of late night conversations about creating a space where diverse stakeholders could come together, not only to discuss ambition, but to also focus on implementation. Today, that idea has become a reality, and implementation is urgent. Last year, renewables generated about 50.4% of UK's electricity. First time in history, green power overtook fossil fuels. The UK also added 4.1 gigawatt of new renewable energy capacity, a 7.3% increase, with solar accounting for nearly half of that. But the progress is quite uneven. While renewable electricity surged, renewable heat grew by only 1.6%, and grid constraints are delaying more than $200 billion worth of clean energy projects waiting to connect. And despite strong investment, the UK's low carbon and renewable energy economy still represents just 3.9% of the UK's total economy. If anything, today is an example of how climate change is impacting us all. London has entered into a very severe heat wave, and this week, and the Met Office has said that humans need to be extra cautious. So it's a reminder for all of us that energy transition is not abstract. It is happening around us right now with an all-time high in energy demand. Our future will be increasingly energy intensive. And the energy trilemma of security, affordability, and sustainability is no longer a theoretical knowledge. It is shaping decisions in every sector of the economy. That is why today's panel here really matters. The challenges ahead of us in the energy sector are both complex and exhilarating. Energy security, investment, infrastructure, workforce, technology, and international cooperation are all deeply intertwined. No single sector can solve this problem all alone. The solutions we need already exist, and the challenge before us is further implementation. And perhaps most importantly, how do we move from ambition to action? So, the London Clean Energy Roundtable is, here we are built on very simple belief that meaningful progress happens when diverse voices come together, listen to one another, and work collaboratively towards solutions. As we look ahead to COP31 in Turkey later this year, we hope that today's discussions contribute not only to new ideas, but to new partnerships, new opportunities, and tangible action. So today we are going to hear from a lot of respected speakers, different panelists, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of how the agenda is going to look here today. So we will start with one panel, and we will cover topics around, energy security, geopolitics, and digitization and integration. Then we're going to move forward onto our second panel. We will talk about workforce equity, finance, and cross-sector collaboration. And our last panel is about youth representation, because today's youth are tomorrow's implementers. So with that, I think thanks again for joining us and for being here in part of this session. We are honored to welcome you all. Thank you. For those of you who were not there yet in our event yesterday, our event at the Parliament, I think it was a blast. We had a little bit of a hiccup, but I feel like we absolutely pulled it through, and we're so happy to have so many of you there. And those who could not join us there yesterday, we have made sure that before our panelists start, we have a little bit of a fireside chat between Saigatas and myself, and we're going to give you an overview of what happened yesterday, how is that time up into the panelists today, and then we will start off with our panel around 3 o'clock. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much to come here, and it's a tremendous pleasure to welcome you all. And first and foremost, thank you so much to Commonwealth for giving us that tremendous, amazing host here. As Shraddha said, it was a late night discussion. Implementation was far away, but we did it together. We did it together with all the partners we have, all of the youth, all of the non-youth, and intergenerational equity aspect. And right now we are representing all our voices. Why we need it, first of all? Do we need another discussions? Do we need another panel? Do we need another roundtable to be happening every year? No, we don't really. And that is the reason we created this roundtable, that we don't need another roundtable. We have a specific platform. Come here, let's talk what we need. Because it's a platform to giving roof to every private sector, public sector, UN, CSOs, UN entities, everyone together. Make some changes. What exactly we don't need, what exactly we need. And it was amazing to see yesterday diversified crowd together. When I'm saying diversified, it's just not about the age or gender. It's about everything, the multi-sectoral aspects that we need. There was politicians, there was private sector, there was the public sector, there was the youth. The representatives were saying about what we exactly need. And that's about the agenda segment. First of all, how many people will know that right now we need policy or implementation? Just want to know. Do we need more policies or we need implementation? How many are there for policies?
Can we have a raise of hands?
Yeah. Come on. And how many there for implementation? Okay. Do you think policy and implementation is right now to do, or maybe we have to scale up? Because we already spoke about it, right? So both policy and implementation run side by side. But right now we need finance, we need other great advancements, we need technology, we need engineering, we need cross-sector. And when we say about cross-sector, we always forget about the 17th goal of SDG, right? It's called the partnership. And this is where we begin, and this is where our entire roundtable is. Yesterday we had a lot of discussion, and most of the point is workforce, the finances that we need, and where we are right now in points of UK policies, right? How many of us know that how much gigawatt of solar actually UK is developing, right? Yeah, like kind of near guess, a ballpark number. 21.5 gigawatts. Like, imagine. So solar has less than 40% capacity factor, but still we are getting to 1.5 gigawatt hour, which is really amazing in terms of how the management, how the policies, how the entire implementation is working, right? So this is where we'll be talking how we have to scale it up. It's not about the solars; it's about the workforce as well. Do they have the skill to maintain those workforces? They do have the skill to maintain those engineering technology aspect that we are setting up in our home. We don't have. So this is what we have spoken.
Yeah, I think on the workforce bit, it was really nice to see yesterday Ephraim. He was from LinkedIn, and they have just released their UK Green Jobs report. I was actually quite, I don't know, surprised to see the numbers because we, first of all, everybody who's coming into this industry is always constantly having this issue around, there aren't enough jobs. But according to the report, the rate at which green transition is progressing is about 38% less than the rate at which jobs are coming into the market. So, which means there's 38% more rate of jobs coming into the market. So, where are all these jobs? I want to know, because I'm pretty sure a lot of young people also here in the audience would love to know. Okay, so there is so much of scope in which they can try to actually come onto the side of implementation, work in the industry, and be on the implementation side of things. So it was really nice to get an overview of that report yesterday. Um, Speaking of which, not just from a workforce transition perspective, we quite often, I think we underestimate the importance of finance in the sense that people know we need finance, people know there is money going somewhere, but there is always this data gap of where is this money going into. I think I brought that up because I felt like even the same situation happens with jobs as well. Quite a lot of people, the data says that there are too many jobs in the market, but then the ground reality is people sometimes come up to me and be like, where are all these jobs? So I think it's a similar situation, like a reflection is what is happening with finance as well. I know that we cover finance in our panel too today, but what do you think in terms of the numbers? Because I know we are about $3 billion in terms of how much finance is required, and only 18% of it is actually going into the market for implementation. So, what's your take on that?
Well, it says that 22 billion is already allocated, but only 18% has been done. In fact, if you see hydrogen, the green hydrogen projects, they have been stalled just because we started green hydrogen project I think 2-3 years back with 2.1 billion allocation of money, but at that time all the investors are going out just because of some fiscal policies, how they have been portrayed in terms of getting the return backs. So this is where we have to talk about, like how we have to increase the funding, but also have to increase the you can say investors' capacity in terms of how to take them in, right? So this is where we are lacking, and also is when we talk about global level, every policies here in UK shifts according to the global level as well. We see how the energy security is right now in global aspect, right? And we also have seen previously how during the war and how it was a crisis for us. So we have to get back to our own feet. This is where we need electrification, electrify everything in terms of renewables. We don't have to stall or curtail any projects. We have to get the grids, we have to get the battery storages on the spot. So if we have more of capacity building and we don't have a proper way how to transfer those skills, there's not a point. So everything comes one after another. So that is why Clean Energy Roundtable have few thematics which has been discussed yesterday that okay, we need those kind of topics which have to be discussed rather than a broader view. We have to be very narrow down what exactly we want, other than we have to plan from bottom to top rather than top to bottom. So this is where we are right now, and I think today we will gain a lot of perspective in terms of number, in terms of technicalities. I'm assuring you that after you leave this room, you will be at least knowing something which you haven't before. So this is where we are here, and I'm also keen to know and understand and learn from our panelists as well. And yes, Again, I really want to say that we are launching, and we launched yesterday in the Parliament, the Clean Energy Roundtable, and it's gonna be bigger every year. We don't want every year to happen just because we want a proper implementation plan all the time. We don't want to come back, but if it doesn't happen, we will be coming all the time, and we will be advocating for it. And we need a proper just energy transition.
Thanks, Aiken. I think we can have a fireside chat on that note, and we're here for we know about the policies, we know the gaps in the policies, we know we want to implement. So I think we are presenting this platform as some way where we can come together and talk and identify these gaps and build an action plan. So with that note, I think we can start our panel now. I'm gonna invite our chairperson, Gokul Krishnan. He's a representative of LCER. He's our energy systems integration and transition delivery expert. We have our first speaker, Nadra Okir. She's representing Commonwealth, energy security and geopolitics. I would request all the speakers and the chairperson to come up, even if I'm standing here. And then we have our speaker two, Daniel. He's from DNV and he's going to represent grid integration and storage. Speaker three is Ben Whittle from Turner and Townsend. He's going to represent thematic digitization and decarbonization. And we also have our speaker four, Malang Sambo, who's representing Gambia Energy and Mitigation Negotiator. So much. Thank you for being here. Please come on the stage. He is representing our cross-sector systems collaboration. Over to you.
Yes, and also before that, are we good? So we say good afternoon. Good afternoon. More, I didn't hear. More energy. We are here with the clean energy. We need energy inside our servers, right? Good afternoon, everyone. Amazing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Saket, for just stepping it up. And again, good afternoon all, and thank you all very much for being here. And thanks to our panelists. And I am so happy to kick off this roundtable conference, and this is our first panel session. And as Saket mentioned earlier, we need implementation, and we need policies, and as Shala mentioned, like there is an energy trilemma, but one thing we are missing, and I think that's the coordination. Why? Because I should have coordinated before with Shala and Saket on what they're going to speak, because I had the exact uh, prepared to speak on energy trilemma and policy integration. So now I'm just confused on what to speak because they already spoke. So I think, yeah. So that's what I'm also trying to figure out what we can do with the coordination. So as Saket mentioned, we have lots of solar energy, and I'm basically from Scotland, and wherever we go, we can see a lot of windmills, and we already have like more than 100% of self-reliance on, for Scotland at least, with wind. But the issue is more than 60% of the wind energy is being wasted. Wasted energy is not something that we can all accept given the situation, because the cost is increasing and everything is increasing, but still we are wasting a lot of energy. And I think that supports my first point on coordination. And I think that's why we really need a yearly roundtable conference on what we are trying to do and what we need first in place, like, to see like if we are repeating ourselves or what we are trying to do. And said that this session is going to be on one key question on how do we move forward from clean energy ambition to real world implementation. Like as we said, like we need to implement it, we need to build it, but there's a trilemma, we already have it. We're not using it, or we are not maintaining it, or we are not matching the demand and supply. And I think that's the key for our energy security, infrastructure, and digitalization, which is our topic for this first panel session. And then again, people mentioned that I'm joining with a diverse panelist here. We have Nadira Ogier from Commonwealth, who will be focusing on energy security and geopolitics, and we have Daniel Houghton from DNB, who will be bringing us light on grid infrastructure systems. Ben Whittle from Turner and Townsend, focusing on digitalization, which I think very important now, and Malang Samwa from Gambia Energy Mitigation and Negotiation, from UNFCCC, bringing the critical global south and climate negotiation perspective. And I'm going to start with the first few questions to all of you here. I think I'll start with Malang, because he's not me. So Malang, so can you just start with a 30-second pitch about who you are, why you are important in this discussion, and one of the biggest barriers in both security and climate goals together?
Thank you, and then good afternoon to all of you, my colleagues here at the panel, and of course you. Malang is a gentleman who is very focused and want a real change for the community in the global south. Basically, I defend the voice of my people, and we really want to see from talks to implementation.
And next, I'll go with Narira from geopolitical perspective. What's the biggest risk today for the global clean energy security?
I think that's, I can't do that in 30 seconds.
No, 30 seconds is for your pitch. Like, tell me about yourself and why you are important in this discussion.
Okay, so my name is Nara Ujir. I am the head of the Energy and Natural Resources Division at the Commonwealth Secretariat. The Commonwealth Secretariat, or the Commonwealth, is the intergovernmental organization of 56 member countries, representing over 2.7 billion people across the world. And in particular, the majority of that population is under the age of 30. When we are looking at transforming global economies, global systems in a fair, just, equitable manner, the Commonwealth is one of the most important vehicles to do that. And my team and I, and the entire organization, is geared towards ensuring that the energy transition and all that goes with it ensures a fair, prosperous, and resilient future for all, and with a particular focus on the youth, because again, the youth is the future.
Thank you. And next we'll go with Dan. So 30 seconds pitch, and what's the biggest pressure on energy systems?
So hi everyone, I'm an electrical power systems engineer at DUV. So I work with solar storage and wind developers to connect to grid, and work with system network operators to do system planning, network design, and construction monitoring. The biggest impact on grid from my perspective is the grid itself. Is investing in the grid, building the grid. That is really my focus.
Thanks, Dan. And we're looking forward to Ben on AI data center or digitalization. What's the biggest barrier there?
The biggest what, sorry?
Barrier.
I would say, well, my name is Ben Whittle. I work for St. Townsend. I'm a consultant. I work with a range of clients, NHS, universities, local authorities, governments, and so on, to help them in their decarbonisation efforts. I would say the biggest problem we face at the moment is just, you could characterise it as uncontrolled growth, I suppose. The rate of expansion is so quick, and keeping up with it is so hard. It's very quick to build a data centre or an AI centre. It's very slow to get a grid connection to it. And because of that, there is going to be some inequality in all sorts of realms.
Thank you, Ben. And I think we have just started with problems, so I think we can quickly move on implementation and solution. So here I would like to be, I would like to take, you can take all your time to explain on what's the implementation or solution that you can bring for the first problem that you mentioned. And for now, I think we'll start from Ben, because he was the earliest, and you mentioned that the biggest risk is the building and maintaining it and the controlling the grid to the digital requirements, and that's one of the key for data centers. I believe, like, we need continuous power, clean power without any fluctuations. So can you come up with an implementation or solution which you think is the most important thing? Like, what would you do as an implementation or solution?
I think one of the problems that we see across the world is that building new data centres is not being matched by renewable energy. I used to work in the Welsh Government Energy Service, and it was not unusual to come across projects where building the solar array, building a large solar farm, was less than half the price of the project. There was a far bigger cost in actually bringing the grid connection to solar farm. What we're seeing now, so it was mentioned earlier that there was a lot of solar planned in the pipeline for the UK. It's happening all over the world. But at the moment, 60% of energy going into data centres is coming from fossil fuels. Nearly all of the data centre development is happening in countries which have got, unfortunately, not very clean grids. So about 50% of compute power is centred in America. About 25% of compute power is centred in China. We know that China has made amazing efforts in its attempts to green their grid with green energy, but ultimately it's still got quite a dirty grid at the moment. What we need to see in the future is that all new grid connections are treated as an opportunity, not just for data centres, but for renewable energy at the same time. Because otherwise, we're just going to end up in a trap potentially where all new compute power gets slightly cheaper at the expense using up renewable energy, and all it does is fuel even more development in AI without it being matched by more renewable energy.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest constraint, like the usage of data center increases the cost, which in turn is related on the key feedstock, that is energy. So we need to maintain the energy cost, to maintain the EI cost and building cost. Thank you so much. And on that, moving on with Dan. So what's the first infrastructure upgrade that must happen immediately?
Well, there's not in the UK, as you mentioned earlier, all the wind, a load of wind generation is offshore in Scotland, and a lot of the demand is in south of England. So you've got all the losses that come from transmitting that power from the north to the south. There's data centres are often built near population centres, which are, again, mostly in the south of the country, where all our generations in the north. So at the moment, the transmission system operators are trying to develop kind of HVDC links, which are relatively new compared to the AC links, to bring that energy from the north of Scotland, offshore in Scotland, down to South England and Wales. So there's two Project Western Link over the west of the country, existing 5 green projects. Then the HVDC kind of 200, 300 kilometre long connections through that technology south. And those are in development at the moment. Hopefully in 10 years they'll be connected, but that's a little bit more system planning 10 years ago, maybe they'll be implemented now. And we wouldn't have as much curtailment with the wind in Scotland.
Exactly, and I think that's correlated with what Ben mentioned earlier. He was saying that we are buying things from US, we are buying things from China, and if we can co-locate together everything, and if we find energy producers, and we can build data centers near to the energy producers, and that will solve the biggest problem of wasting energy, I think. Thanks so much, Ken, for that. And Nadia, so for you, how a country can balance the energy security, affordability, and decarbonization without compromising one or the other? Like if we go back to what Shada mentioned, like energy trilemma, if we concentrate on one thing, that will affect the other thing. Like if we concentrate on affordability, then maybe we'll lose the energy security, or that might be not affordable. And if you're just concentrating on affordability, then we might lose on sustainability. So what's your take on that? How a country can move forward with this challenge?
I think you've actually already described the key issue, which is that, and often it's looked at juggling, right? So when we're juggling, if you only focus on one ball, you will drop the others. And that is the issue at hand. And when we frame this discussion around the geopolitical landscape and what's happened within the last couple of years, and especially with the element of increasing conflict, geopolitically, the discussions around energy has now returned to focusing on multiple goals. Energy is at the heart of everything. So yes, it is core to the climate crisis because energy is responsible for more than 3/4 of global emissions. In the last couple of years, all discourse around energy has tended to focus on the environmental aspect, focusing primarily on climate. But there are lots of others, for example, water. And in today's, where we're going to be facing more and more climate shocks, that will come to the fore as well. Economic security and national security, economic development, and the centrality of affordable energy has changed the way that countries are once again looking at this. And the affordability element, we are all grappling with that in our own ways when we look at cost of living crisis. This comes back to energy as central to everything, to fuel, to food, to products that we use. So the most important thing is actually not having a siloed view of energy. And it always requires an integrated, systematic approach. And I like the introductory remarks because it's, if you wish to have sustainable policies, it requires that type of approach. And when you do that in a very clear way that is grounded in analytical frameworks and data, it then enables your plans to be practical and implementable. So quite often when you have unrealistic, it's great to have ambitious plans. It's always important for us to have ambition. But if they are not grounded in reality, it will not be implementable. And I think that is one of the most important things for us all to bear in mind, that energy is difficult because it touches every single aspect of our lives. And it is integrated. Trillions of dollars are already latently, inherently built into the systems. Change, therefore, requires coherent approaches and systematic approaches to deliver impact. So I think that's one of the things. And the other that I would echo is, again, in today's world, there is no more greater push and strategic imperative where the clean energy transition is the future, because it is one of the greatest protection for energy security and hence national socioeconomic development, which also it delivers a triple win. It delivers in economic development, energy and national security, and environmental sustainability. So I think these are some of the things when we're operating in the space for us to really bear in mind. And we work very much with governments on thinking about strategic policies and implementing the laws, legislations, contracts, etc., to help realize this.
Thanks, Nadia. And I think that is again it gets a co-discussion of all the first three answers. Like we have a date, we have a demand, and we have supply, but it's not connected. That was the statement. Ben Kate and Dan said like we co-locate them, and mentioning that we need to focus on all the three aspects as a coherent and systematic approach. Really, thanks to that, and moving on with Umana. So hearing all this discussion, so how do you manage the infrastructure digitalization with affordability as well as the policy from a negotiating point of view? So how do you think you can manage all three demands together when it comes to negotiation? What comes first and what's second?
I think it's quite interesting to hear point of views. What is that at the negotiator point of view? We are there with so many diverse entities, retail blocks of group of people who have very good knowledge in different kind of areas. So perfectly from my side, the least developed country and then the same time African group of negotiators, where within the same block there is very big difference. We have a block that is rich and a block that is poor. So obviously the use of energy is different, what is represented. Then therefore for me coming from that background where little things that is necessary, that is life force, is not like luxury. So therefore we need to make sure that we answer the daily life of the woman. For instance, my entity, Molo Association, we integrate the energy systems in woman life that gets mechanize the household workload of the woman. So therefore you need energy to pump water, and then you need energy to pound just together a kilo of flour, and you need energy of course for the garden and all those sort of things. So therefore that thing, if it is answered, this is the part of humanity that we bring in the negotiation of That means it's the space where we can humanize it a little bit and not only focusing on finance, because most of the time this is what is taking that space. Article 9.1, this is everybody talking about, and forget about the human being. Currently, when the heat comes, it doesn't know whether you are black or white. It will be what it has to be. So everybody need to feel that. So definitely we defend and make sure that the third world countries are represented and the voice of the indigenous people who definitely are taking the body of the climate change. So this is what we are bringing that space. So obviously I think that our voice are heard in the space where the mitigation work program and the just transition. I think is a space that we are really hitting hard.
Exactly. I think you touched on a very important point that we missed to discuss on few decades. That energy is for human, and we need to consider human part of it before we consider the war or anything. War affects everyone, so does the energy. Energy is also kind of war. So we must consider the human needs and what it's to uplift everyone together and grow together. Thanks, Miraman. And I'll go with another question which you touched already. Since you mentioned there's a huge need for uplifting people and to manage the needs of people with respect to energy. So who do you think would be the best cross-sector body that you would be working with to make that happen? In government policy or in finance or in infrastructure? Who think is the best body for you?
Yeah, for me, the best body is from the bottom to approach. We start with the end users and see how energy can change life. For instance, in the Gambia, there's a saying that they say, oh, Gambia will end life matter because just a simple thing. You go to take bath, to have a child in the hospital, there's no energy. And therefore, that's the life of the child and the life of the body. So therefore, if we can power that, from renewable energy, that's a change. And putting women in the forefront of that. That's why we have a score for women that are doing. And believe me, in the Gambia, 23 megawatts that we have installed with Chinese company, 30% of the workforce has been ladies. Trained after 6 months, they get the professional level to be in that. And currently also, we are really building a project that has something to do with, organic waste and zero waste. So it is removing 12 markets, organic waste and then transforming 3 tons of waste into compost directly using renewable energy. So therefore, here we have, it is represented in one of the biggest, gardens, which is where our politicians are residing. So therefore, you have the policy makers there and seeing the reality how energy can get impact in people's life. So therefore, when they go to that parliament, they defend it in good faith. And then for me, being in the civil society background and then representing the Gambia in the negotiation room, therefore we have both sides. When I'm there, I'm a party. But if I'm down there, I'm from the civil society. So in that case, we are really defending the reality. So that means we work from both civil society and then the government. They complement each other. Don't see each other as a threat and make sure that we all work towards that goal that is bringing green energy in our grids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mom. I think you again made the discussion so thematic. So if I'm rephrasing it, that you were saying that first we need to focus on demand, who needs that, and how we can help them, and start looking on how to implement that or develop infrastructure. And finally, we need the policies that can implement this in a smoother way so that we are targeting the right demand with the right infrastructure. Thank you so much. And coming to you, Navia, so what do you think? Who's your big buddy to implement a clean energy policy on a country level? So who do you first work with, and why do you work with them first?
I think as the Commonwealth Secretariat, we are an intergovernmental organization. So our engagement is based on a methodology of always being demand driven, where countries see a particular need, and I completely endorse what my colleague has said here in terms of we need to humanize this issue much more, and I think we myself included quite often go to quoting statistics and numbers And I think we always need to return to really and truly what's the desperate need of hundreds of millions of people across the world. And within the Commonwealth, I'm so sorry to use a number, I've just defaulted, but there's 1.4 billion people without access. So we're not talking yet about transition. And I always, this is the challenge when we are engaging with many developing countries, vulnerable developing countries. The question is always, but never. I first need to get access to energy. Of course, now these things are not incompatible with each other, of course. But I think that underscores very, very strongly what has been said. And in order for that to work well, it's not one body, it's all of us are investing in it. So for us, real change comes about when we look at this from a multi-stakeholder approach. Governments by themselves can solve this. Companies can solve this, nor can communities. So it really does require us all working together. Again, the remarks were very on point in saying, let's not forget the last SDG, but without it, the realization of the other 16 are going to be difficult. So I think for me, it's very much let us all hold hands together, and when we do that, that's when we will be able to move decidedly and much more faster. I think.
Thanks, Nadia. Absolutely right. We need a consortium. We need to build a consortium with the right people, with the right infrastructure, digital policy makers, as well as the people who are really in need and to find the real need and to work on that moving forward. Dan, so what do you think is the key element for the cross development with respect to the grid establishment or building an infrastructure? Hearing from our first two panelists answers, so what do you think you need to first speak with to develop before developing the grid infrastructure?
Yeah, just to build on what I was saying, because we're working across the globe, it's a global issue. It's all one atmosphere. But at the moment in Europe, when you're building massive infrastructure projects, there's a tendency to rely on the same OEMs, the same manufacturers, the same companies. Whereas in different parts of the world, there are different manufacturers who maybe do something slightly differently, or maybe have more availability to build it now. So instead of bottlenecking one or two or three manufacturers in Europe, in Germany, France, there are manufacturers in Southeast Asia who are producing maybe slightly different products,
Small products, yeah.
And the type testing and proving those for use in our system is something that it's probably a reluctance. There's been a reluctance to do, but they're proved to be operational in the grids around the world. So there's no reason why they couldn't be operational in European grids in different places. And so a bit of collaboration, maybe with new companies, which is people are scared of doing that. People don't like working with new people, new companies, because it's not proven. But I think in a lot of places it is proven. So being a bit more open to new ideas, new products, new OEMs would be the best start.
Thanks, Dan. So Ben, finally, so who do you think is your best buddy? Who do you first speak with or consider before building your real infrastructure for clean energy or digital infrastructure?
Are you talking more in a kind of global sense, global north versus global south perspective, or?
I think the problem is both, because we can't just speak about our country without considering other country. As I mentioned earlier, we have a very good operating system, so I think we can just speak on a global level, though not a global sort of level.
Sure. I think I would say that, at the moment there are international standards that govern elements of data center and AI growth, but they're mostly about data security, energy resilience, and so on. And at the moment, there's no international international collaboration on regulation. So the issues you were talking about, water, there are metrics that measure this stuff for data centers. We have how effectively is it, how being used, how effectively is the water being used. Overwhelmingly at the moment, water is getting used very poorly for a lot of the installations across the world. But really, is there potentially a risk in the future that the money from AI goes to the places that have the least regulation, because it's easier to put stuff down when there are no regulations to how it works. So I think really what we need to see is countries across the world coming together to create standards that cover power and electricity use. And at the moment as well, when we hear about data centres being powered with green energy, they are overwhelmingly relying on power purchase agreements rather than actually developing new renewables to go along with those installations actually on site. So I think there should be some also measures around additionality to show that not only are you meeting standards about energy performance and water performance, but also bringing other social benefits along. And we need to be in a situation where the global south is actually not just becoming a customer of AI and data centres from the global north, but developing skills in the global south to be able to install and manage their own installations as well.
Thanks, Ben. It was really good to understand that we are underestimating the needs of AI with other feedstocks, especially energy, water, and other resources, land, and maybe I'm going to place it and how much it's going to cost, and what are the local regulations and what are the global regulations. Like if you are developing a data center remotely in a different country, how that affects the energy security, data security, and lots of other things. Thank you so much. Actually, I just wanted to have this round, but we still have like 20 minutes, so I think I'll go another round because, as I mentioned earlier, like we started with a trilemma. There's a contradiction between what we want, and it's all contradiction between that. And I can clearly see within the 3 rounds we started with one, and we are going for a different path. So I just want a quick overview on what do you feel is supporting your digital requirement or is not supporting your digital requirement from your other kinds point of view. Just like one or two sentences, like that's helpful, that's not helpful.
Sorry, I'm not sure that I understand.
You hear a lot of opinion from different people here. You mentioned that you are hesitant to buy stocks from US and China, but again, we came to know that like it's better to co-work with other global powers as well. So do you think that, as an example, what do you think that, or if you want to comment on any other points made today, is helpful for AI digitalization, or it doesn't help you, you need a different association with that?
Yeah, kind of the pros and the cons of collaborations. Another aspect where we are right now in terms of AI, but in terms of digitalization.
Just a point, if you're comfortable, or yeah, just
I'm going to think on that and I'll come back to you.
sure. That's a good thing. Ben, sorry, Dan, what do you think?
So I could think about how
What helped? What discussion today helped you a lot, or it is not helping you well? Did you see any advantage or disadvantage in any of the points made today?
I think there's a lot of good discussions about collaboration and everything's a global issue. You can't kind of silo with this. This isn't for one person, one company, or one even country or group of countries to fix. This is a global issue with everyone's brains working on it, and every company's expertise and skills helping out. I think there's a across the board collaboration.
Yeah. Maria, you want to comment on that? Like, do you think that it's helpful for your decision making on policy?
Well, I think it's, I'll just echo others' comments, but I probably would add to some of the points that have been made by the panel members and myself, is this is a very complex area that continues to increase in complexity. And I think I quite like the banner of, all sectors, help me there.
All sectors, one roof, one solution.
One roof, one solution. And I think that is going to be what's really required as we go forward. So I think one of the things that we also need to contemplate is that in our quest for energy security, that a lot of the world is thinking of this in terms of trade-offs. And you really do require really clear elements of what it takes for this transition. So the clean energy will not be realized or implementable, as an example, without critical minerals. And critical minerals, when we start talking about humanizing and the impacts on the ground, linked to the demand and supply disconnect, where the demand for energy is and where the demand for critical minerals is very disconnected from where the supply of these vital raw materials are. That in itself, coupled with the very negative impacts on the communities and the people, and in particular women and the youth, also requires very clear thoughts, and it needs to be part of the conversation when we're talking about clean energy. We cannot have a clean energy revolution without more of mining. And that is something that needs to be a little bit more deeply connected. So we are in a world that is transitioning from 3 critical minerals, right, whether you think of it as coal, oil, and gas, to one that will be 30 plus critical minerals. And that for batteries, for magnets, for semiconductors, for chips, for AI, the risks of disruptions, vulnerabilities, and risks where the people are going to be even more. So I think something for us under the banner of the one roof sort of approach is that we really need to think of this collaboratively across all of these elements for us to have success.
If I could just say something about that point that you just raised there as well, which is that at the moment, some data centers, there's a lot of inherent value in a data center once it's being built. But originally, when we think back to the very early versions of AI, they were using 1 or 2 tokens to process very simple requests. Now, 4 years later, a more in-depth query can be generated, could require a million tokens. And for that reason, data centers are getting upgraded. Sometimes the replacement cycle of the materials inside the data center is no more than 3 years. And we're creating a mountain of e-waste, and only about 15 to 20% of it is managing to be recycled at the moment. So when you think about those replacement rates and how little is being recycled back into the supply chain, it just puts so much more pressure on the situation that you're describing there.
I think it's a good point. Like we made the same mistake earlier. We installed a lot of wind energy and we are now facing a lot of recycling on this wind energy forward. I think we face the same on AI or data centers if you're not concentrating that right now. It's a very good point there. Funding, so what do you think of this discussion? So what impacted you more?
I think I'm aligned with my colleagues. Generating renewable energy needs critical minerals, and therefore, for me, I come back to the same. Small people are different, doing small things. I mean, it's a responsibility for each and every one of us. Not only talking about problems, but how do we solve them. So for me, renewable energy which is not linked to livelihood and then well-being, we are still in trouble because you go to the place, uplift what you uplift in Congo, and then live there with misery. So that is really touching life. Okay, you give a good life to all people, oh, we are clean, but then down there it's really poor. So therefore, it is very important that we make sure that renewable energy is linked to already a livelihood, at least where you are living, because people have their food, and then everybody deserves to have wake up in the morning and touch your ball and light is there. You deserve to have your hot water or sour as you need. And then the other thing is, it's not really fair to see that a woman will be looking for 1 kilo of flour 4 hours per day, or simply just to wash your clothes, 20 kilos, it takes you 5 hours. So if renewable energy or clean energy can do that, I think they deserve to have that good time to read. Obviously, boys, they have much more opportunity, they can reach to higher education, but the woman needs to be clean. And it's really sad to say that there are machines for washing, cleaning, cooking. So I found that thing when I was young. My mother is the first child in the home. She doesn't read and write, and her mother the same. But all my uncles are high position. So that have really inspired me when I left my country as a young immigrant that went to Spain. I said, I have to read and go back. Then 2009, I just picked everything, went back, built a school for young girls. And today they are building huge amount of renewable energy projects, and then they are bringing, that washing machine to the communities, cooling stations, to markets, for this sort of waste, so that we avoid all those kind of things. I think these are small solutions. We don't need big things. Small solutions that can solve the reality of the people. This will change a lot in their life. And then I think obviously for policymakers and the people who have the money, the finance, it's just a matter of having this point of solidarity to make sure that we give back to that community who are giving those critical immigrants.
That's a great one. That's right. You said that we have to start just working at Grove Lake to find the right demand. Thank you so much and appreciate your work on building the community. And with that note, I would like to conclude this panel session. If we have like a couple of questions, we can take the questions now. Yeah, we have a question.
Shout.
Yeah, I think we can
I'm
just.
quite loud. I'm probably just shout. Thank you. My question is for Belle. Sorry, I'm asking from the UK government to do succession negotiations with Milan and the electricity. But my question is for you. Thank you.
I find your point.
I find your point about how the standards around data centres at the moment aren't focusing on the environmental impacts really interesting, also alarming, given the vast rate of expansion with data centres that's currently happening all over the world. I wondered if you had any thoughts on the best way to tackle that, whether it's at the multilateral level through a new multilateral environmental agreement, existing structures like the UNFCCC, a whole new entity that's set up to deal with that, and then also who might be best placed to lead that. Is that best led from industry, from government? If it is government, is there a sort of leader that stands out that would be best placed to take up that mantle in the way that Latin America is taking the mantle of fossil fuels at the moment? I was interested in any reflections there. Thanks.
I'm glad you weren't asking normal questions then. Well, that's quite a range there. I mean, I made a point earlier on about the fact that there's theoretically a risk that AI and data centers end up being developed in places that have the least regulation. There doesn't seem to be any risk of that at the moment. Like I said, we're at this period of completely uncontrolled growth. So to give you some perspective, a UK perspective, at the moment there's about 120 data center projects in the pipeline, and they represent about 8 gigawatts of electrical power. That won't mean much to many people, I'm sure, but that's essentially about 20% of current electricity demand. So we didn't see ourselves in this situation 4 years ago. This trajectory we're on at the moment, it doesn't look like it's going to abate for at least 4 or 5 years. So there's time for us to get our ducks in a row. But ultimately, I guess there's a kind of moral aspect to this on a sort of UK government level. Do we want to be in a position where we start regulating when other governments aren't? And that's a really difficult question to answer. I don't have an answer for you on that. I think it's going to have to be a combination of top and bottom. We've had other people making the same comments before. We need brave governments to go out and start regulating this stuff, setting their own standards for power quality use and water use and so on. And hopefully we will end up in a situation coming from the other side where the customers, if you like, are demanding regulation. They want to see the proof that this will happen with the data centers and services that they're using, that they can be some kind of governance process that matches the energy use and the generation of renewable energy, or even better, actually regenerating it at the point where the data center is being built. But I don't think I've got an answer for you on who is best placed to do this. I think it's just one of those situations where everybody has to be making some effort, and it's going to take a while before all countries are able to catch up, and that's natural. But the best placed governments should be doing the best they can as soon as possible.
Answer your questions. Do you have any other questions, or do you want to answer?
No, but just to offer reflections on it. I think that's such a great question you've posed. A really tough one as well, actually.
Sorry.
But I just want to reflect it, because listening to you speak as well, I think I'm just reflecting on this issue has come up in many ways in many different thematic areas, lots of different areas. And it usually requires a few really strong displays of leadership, and then everyone follows. So I think for me, whether we look at it from any issue, whether we look at it from ozone, that's now well adapted, whether we look at it from methane, whether we look at it from so many different pieces, even today, electrification, right, in terms of the COP presidency really pushing for that. Usually having a coalition of willing, of critical mass, so that it is really will have an impact. The key industry players, the key governments from a demand perspective, and even key governments from supply, perhaps, can start a momentum and initiative to drive real change. So I just think it's something to reflect on how we learn from a lot of these other things that are building and where success really has come. It's from that sort of cohort of coalition of the willing.
Any other answers? Forward with another question.
Forming my thoughts on the spot. Thank you, panel. Been very informative. My name is Henry Riley Collins. My company is called the Fish Friendly Hydropower Company. And I hear you saying, guys, what we need is dependable energy, dependable grids, reliable, consistent, avoid transmission costs and distances, decentralization, all of these words. Are you aware that the UKRI, UK Research and Innovation, have stopped any funding towards hydroelectric power innovation? 60% of humanity live within walking distance of flowing water, and we're calling out for decentralized, dependable day and night solutions for energy for women and villages. And I can't make this fit. We seem to have exchanged sensible energy generation, which fits with our way of life, for the cheapest pound per megawatt, which doesn't account for how long it runs for, or the availability of it. Yes, solar is cheap pounds per megawatt, but it has all of the other issues that comes with it in terms of needed for storage and cost of silicon, etc. So I suppose my question for you is, who should I talk to for support in this, to raise this issue and yes, help us particularly on our mission, because we're not getting it in the UK.
So with grid connections, and Lisa set up a new UK government business. It's set up CP30, which is Clean Power 2030, and following on from that, it's going to be the Strategic Spatial Energy Plan, which looks at quotas and zonal kind of capacity in the UK for different types of technologies. So that's most of that is looks at storage, wind and solar, but it does look at all the technologies as well. They've also introduced kind of the long duration energy storage element. So they've defined that now, that's now 8 hours for 100 megawatts. It's now defined as long duration storage, and that's exempt from those targets as well. So to build a battery site, which is 100 megawatts and lasts for 8 hours, is huge. We don't have one in the UK. There's a few in Chile, America, Australia. The UK doesn't have any of those. So our long duration sites, which do count, are hydro plants. Not run of river, energy storage plants like that. Yeah, we don't have a lot of run-of-river generation in the UK. We'll talk about the ones in over in Wales. I forget the names, sorry, but those ones. Yeah, so hydroelectric dams are included in kind of the energy density tables that Lisa were publishing, and they are included in the CP30 plan. In terms of who talks about development, that's government policy. And
it's waning and whittling away.
I'd like to answer that, given my Scottish Scottish knowledge. Like, we have lots of small hydropower which are supported by the councils. So I think that would be a better option to start with, because also like it's very complicated and takes time, but I think it can be done much quicker when you directly contact with the council where you find you have a very good hydropower potential. You can just speak with the local community or the council and start a project with the council's budget. I think that would be a starting point to that.
I can add one other person you might want to speak to. I'm guessing that you might know her already, Kate Gathercole?
Kate Gilmore.
Sorry, you're quite right, Kate Gilmartin, yeah. Chair of the British Hydropower Association, and also a big player in the UK government's clean energy strategy.
Also beating the same drum, which is where's the investment gone for hydropower? It seems to have drifted into other renewables when we're a nation of water.
You think any other questions? No. And I think I'll conclude this first panel and I'll thank the panelists again and the attendees for patiently listening to our hands on energy security, affordability, and infrastructure. Thank you all.
I think this is the best example that under one roof, civil society, finance, the grids, the AI and digitalization. All the discussion was centered in one point, what we need in people-centric way. And in fact, when the discussion was going on with solution, like transferring the information, that is what we need rather than just one way. And thank you so much for bringing this panel together. The entire situation was around few points, which was integrated remarks. We need no more greater push other than the push of proper socio-economic development, energy security. Use of energy is different, but of course, we to be more humanized rather than just being asking for finance demand, but also how to protect that finance in terms of mechanism and frameworks. Multi-stakeholder approach is really indeed a need. And of course, for AI, we can use the AI in proper manner to generate a demand side management, and we can collaborate every sector together. And definitely, the grid is one of the pressing situation. And where we are talking about the grids, we also talk about cross-sectoral collaborations. And thank you so much. Thank you so much to the panel and all the speakers here. Thanks a lot for being with us. We are transitioning to our second panel, and it will be amazing because workforce, finance, cross-sectoral collaborations all coming together. So we'll take 5 to 7 minutes to do the transition, and then we will start the second panel. And also listen to our song as well.
Welcome to London, where the future begins. One room, one purpose, many voices within. For the people, for the plan, we're gathered today. To light up tomorrow, in a greater, fairer way. From top to you, from policy to power, we rise together now. This is the turning hour. Energy Roundtable, one roof, one voice, one dream. Private, people united, not just energy stream. Energy Roundtable. Master plans in view, from boredom to the world. We know what's new. All barriers are falling. Step by steady step. With every mind and motion, we keep promise care. We'll come to you action. From policy to power, we rise together now. This is the turning hour. Under the energy roundtable, one roof, one voice, one dream. People
Not so much. It's more,
Okay, I think we are just away from our second panel. What an interesting conversation that the panelists are also having a conversation right there in the middle of the room. So I love that. If everyone could take their seats back, and we will start the session in about 45 seconds.
where are you from? I live in Bristol. That's in terms of actual code. I just did it. Protocols are going to get Congress and my first area. The company saw us every day and did not and I'm trying to figure out more just trying to figure out the best advice where funding sources and extra resources. That's all you should just require.
Okay, started. So thanks everyone. I think the first panel went really well. There were so many questions and so many important conversation. I feel like we could talk hours about that. But we've got another panel happening right now, and that is more about finance and investment, workforce transition and equity, and cross-sector collaboration. And I feel like the first panel and the second panel ties everything together. And we've got our amazing chairperson, Josh Oxley. Josh, if you could kindly come up. And we've got our first speaker, Cooper, from International Climate and Negotiations and Youth Engagement from Australian Government. And we've got our second speaker, Johnny Wing from LinkedIn. We're doing cross-sector collaborations. And our last speaker, Nadira Ogier, looks like Nadira has taken a break after her first session. So I'm just going to go see where she is. Do you want to do a round of what's going on?
Yeah, I'll give us a quick, I know Nadia will join us in a minute, so I'll just give us a quick run through. So thank you all for joining us in the second half of the second panel. When I was approached by SciCat to do this, I was thinking that this panel actually arrives at a really specific moment in the clean energy transition conversation. Yesterday, for those that don't know, the latest Tracking SDG 7 report gave us a real reality check and it forces us to be pretty honest with ourselves. So since 2015, we've seen real progress. The number of people without electricity has fallen from 958 million to 655 million. The number of people without access to clean cooking has fallen from 2.7 million to 2 billion. Renewables now make up over 80% of total phyto energy consumption, and installed renewable capacity has more than doubled from 248 to 544 watts per capita. So the story is not that nothing is moving. The story is that progress is still too uneven, still too slow, and still too disconnected. Because 655 million people without electricity access is still 655 million people. 2 billion people without clean cooking access is still 2 billion people. And even if finance is rising, if it's not reaching the right places, the systems that need it the most, and the question becomes less about whether capital exists, and more about whether it's being deployed in ways that deliver and actually matter. And that's really the centre of today's discussion. How do we connect finance to implementation? How do we connect future jobs to real pathways for workers today? And how do we connect energy policy to the wider systems now shaping it? Labour, trade, migration, public health, industrial strategy, etc. So over the next 45 minutes, I'd like us to move from ambition to delivery. Not just asking whether we're investing in training or in partnerships, but whether those efforts are actually joining up where it really matters. Joining me today, I have a fantastic panel, although I noticed that we're one less down, so there'll be plenty of time for a Q&A session. And with that, I'll be delighted to open the conversation. So starting on my left, the question. At the global level, we're seeing more commitments, more partnerships, and more transition language. But the SDG 7 data still shows hundreds of millions of people without electricity and billions without clean cooking. So from your perspective in government and international climate negotiations, where is the biggest disconnect between global commitments and national delivery? So finance, institutional capacity, political coordination values?
I think from my perspective as a young person looking at the world of international climate negotiations and looking at some of the disconnects between pledges and delivery, I think one of my insights, just looking at the situation, is that one of the biggest disconnects is that we don't have enough people that are on the front line or the frontier of both harms and solutions informing the decision making. And I think it's not just about getting people who are on the front lines of, say, something like clean cooking at the decision making table for it to be enough. It's about allowing their voices to have power and allowing their voices to shape the outcomes that are being negotiated and debated at these international levels. I think national level action and national level ambition will lift global ambition. But I think the disconnect is that at the global level, people work in silos, and at the national level, people work in silos. But we need to make a bridge, and that bridge can only come from the people who are at the front lines experiencing, either the harms, the realities, or being part of the solutions day in and day out to actually be the ones who lead action on the global stage. And once we can do that, I do think a lot of our issues and disconnects can be bridged.
I love that, and especially your point on disconnect working in silos. I want to kind of push you on that a little bit more. What do you think would make cross-sector collaboration actually change delivery, rather than just bringing more stakeholders, so more put in conversations? How do we break down those barriers and those silos?
I think cross-sector collaboration is important, it's integral, because no one is an island, and no one can work on their own to achieve effective change. And I think that also works at the sector level. There's something to be said about bringing, more cooks into the kitchen, and whether that makes things more complicated. I think we also need to look at quality as well as we look at quantity. By quality, I mean, when we bring people to the decision-making table, how much power do they have? What is their ability to create systemic change? Are they entrenched in mechanisms wherein their voices translate into real and meaningful change? And if so, how does this work? Is there two-way learning? Are they informing decision-making from ideation to implementation and evaluation? So I think cross-sector partnership is one thing, but to challenge you back, I would say that perhaps it's not quantity, it's quality. It's quality of being in the room and actually what that impact is and how it shapes implementation.
I love that. Yeah, fully agree with that. Turning now to Johnny, this is a nice segue in. So one of the paradoxes that we're seeing within the transition narrative is that we keep saying new jobs are coming, but many people can't seem to find a route into the sort of that quality job itself. So from the labour market data you see, and being honest enough about where the green jobs are actually emerging, where are you seeing the skill systems, the hiring practices, job descriptions that are not necessarily caught up with the transition narrative, and what can we always do to bridge that gap that we're seeing between future projections and current realities on the ground?
Thank you, and great to be here. So having been have a pretty unique view of the labour market and do a research on this, we just, as we mentioned earlier, we were out this week on state green skills in the UK. And what we see here kind of mirrors what we see globally. We've had this delta for the last 4 years of demand for green hiring, outstripping the supply of workers gaining those skills by about 2 points. And I think one of the things that is driving that is not a lack of interest from workers like in the UK, and obviously overall or just in working a green job. That goes up to 5 in 10 for millennials, 6 in 10 for Gen Z. But the barriers that people face are they don't look at skills, they don't think that there are enough jobs out there, which clearly is right, they're just not seeing them. and they can't understand the pathways into it. So I think what we need to see is much better focus on kind of guiding people into the jobs that are available. It's booming demand within energy utilities, obviously, but we also see there's an increasing demand for green skills across every industry, even like financial services, for example, hasn't the lowest concentrations for green skills in any industry, but demand's been up 16% in the last year. You might take an insurance broker, for example, where they need to understand climate risk in a way that they didn't before. And so now we see over half of all green hires are going into roles that traditionally were thought as green jobs. But then to come to the point on how do you show people what's possible, I think there needs to be better collaboration between kind of on the government side, between like education departments, climate departments, workforce and pension departments, as to the approaches are joined up on the government side, and then for working for employers, it needs to be about modular skilling programs within their companies that they can understand the skills that are within their workforce already, which ones are transferable, which key that they need to build and add on to get into these jobs, because oftentimes it's only a few critical skills that need adding on.
If you want to push on the skills, you're finding it kind of pushing a little bit more, and point the job on. You talk about sort of the joining up between government departments, between the education programs, all of this. But from an employer's side of things, what do you think they're still getting wrong? So when it comes to, they say they want transition talent, but they continue to hire through sort of traditional mechanisms, geography, backgrounds. So where do you see that opportunity to have a bit more of a joint up conversation?
Much better skills intelligence. So I think a lot of employers don't know a lot about workforce that they have, and they also don't understand where to access broad talent pools, because at the moment you're finding competition for limited set of experience. We're looking for just those traditional filters of what companies people work out, what industries they come from. If you move to a skills-based model, which is what we've been advocating for a few years, it broadens the green talent pool by 3.5 times. It helps you bring more diverse workforce in, and that's actually especially important for green jobs because we see that they are way overrepresented by men at the moment. So in the UK, for every 4 men in a green job, there's just 1. And if you move to skills-based approach, you're broadening that sample straight away. I think 25% increase in qualified women within key industries if you move to that model. So it's a huge opportunity for companies there to look beyond traditional boxes of where they might find talent.
And I think that also pivots us nicely on to talk about green skills, green jobs as well, and with you here. So the data tells us that installed renewable capacity has been more than doubled since 2015. But capacity doesn't automatically translate into decent work, inclusion, sort of long-term careers. So what would it take for countries to turn sort of clean energy growth into real workforce pathways, especially for young people, women, informal workers, those communities really are being left behind in these conversations?
I think it starts first and foremost actually with understanding the long-term potential and really understanding what is the numbers on the ground for any particular country. Because I think that there is not sufficient analysis to understand the translation of some of the numbers that you've shared with us into what that means. And in order for those jobs to be realized in terms of young people plugging into those jobs, it requires at least a decade of planning. It doesn't happen overnight. So in order for that job that will come up tomorrow, whether it be in renewable energy, or wind or hydro, for the skill set to be embodied in the person to be hired, it needs to have been trained and developed for at least, if you're looking 5 years, perhaps more, depending on where that occurs. So there needs to be a real shift in the way we think about how do you pull the talent pool all the way from even primary school, because it starts there with interest in terms of thinking these are great career paths for the young, the very, very young, so that they are interested in it. And by planning coherently with the industry and government, and we always use this wonderful government, it's not one entity as you've rightly pointed out. It needs real coherence between the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Energy, Labour, to look at all of these things in a holistic way to help understand that potential demand from the sectors coherently across all back to one solution, and then understand what is the supply that can be developed within a country. And we have quite a lot of experience supporting many countries in looking at this from a traditional content perspective, where you look at one or two sectors. And we've had really a very fascinating approach where within a small island developing state, we looked at it from the perspective of driving an approach on local content for the energy sector. So looking at all the sources that could potentially be developed and what are the employment opportunities and then how we feed into that. And I can speak about another example where we're working together with the industry, and this is a powerful example of youth-led initiatives. That it is the CSEP, the Commonwealth Sustainable Energy Transitions Youth Group, that working together with the Ministry of Energy, Education and Industry, we're piloting this year a solar training with the intent of feeding both employment and entrepreneurship into that particular country. And this is something we're hoping to replicate across the Commonwealth. So, I'll use this shamelessly as a plug for anyone who wants to collaborate with the CSET Youth Network. Please let's have a chat.
I want to pick up on the point where you were talking a little bit there about the demand vs the supply, but there's that gap in between, so that we talk about. So, what do you think the biggest gap is in that sense? Is it skill systems? Is it labour protections, finance, policy coordination?
I think there's a first step of lack of awareness. Because I think even someone earlier had said, "Oh, we keep talking about these free jobs. Where are they? Where can they come? What access do I have?" So I think there is a real issue of understanding what the potential is, so that even that's one piece in terms of the broader populace. Also, these are still nascent industries; they're new. So it takes a while for the systems to be built in to supply them. So because they're new, it requires real efforts on sharing where it works well, so that it's replicated. Not all of us, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, as they say. So I think that's one key element that's missing on the ground translation of how it's worked in one place to replicate it in another. And I think in a particular country context, the gap and what needs to close it will be different. In some, it might be awareness. In others, it might be there is not sufficient pool of talent. There may be the lack of availability of training facilities, or even the training facilities themselves. These are very technical industries. For those institutions to have the accreditation to even train takes time as well. So depending on what the country context is, it can be a myriad of things. Some which can be quite, in my view, some can be quickly resolved with effort and political will. And others are structural and may require a longer view to address them. So it's very, very context specific.
That's fantastic. Before I open the floor to everyone, I do have one final question for our panelists, and I'll go in reverse order pertaining to time. So I do kind of want to take this back to the policy moment that's ahead of us. So if you had one recommendation for governments before COP31, what policy, financing mechanism, workforce intervention, whatever it may be, do you think should become a real global priority? Yes.
Workforce, energy planning, energy systems planning, so that to realize this, you need people to forward to it first. So I think for me, that's one of the key things that isn't currently high up on the agenda, I would say.
Much faster, more dynamic labour market, better data, more multi-skill systems. Like we've seen workers who are entering the workforce today, they're on track to have double the number of jobs and their careers as people entering the workforce 15 years ago. We need to get much better at how we quickly support career transitions because these are changing and getting more money.
I would say mainstreaming child rights across all of the negotiation thematics. I think it's been siloed to a degree in the Action for Climate Empowerment, but it needs to become broader and part of every single thematic within the COP so that young people can not only have the opportunities but also the funding and entrenched mechanisms to create the change that we are already doing.
I love that. Now I want to turn to you guys in the audience. This is your opportunity to sort of ask any burning questions that you may have for our panelists. We spoke about workforce, we spoke about cross-sector collaboration, everything here. Really bring any ideas, any thoughts, queries, anything you want to share, and any your perspectives that you can help augment this discussion. Please feel free to raise your hand and our team will come around.
So we can count on us there, but I think what we need to show to everyone, even the question of the
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, so this question is for all of you, but Nadir, you were just talking about small island developing states and cities. So my question is, in some ways, small island developing states, not just within the Commonwealth, but also outside of it, are kind of a canary in the coal mine for issues that larger states in the world are going to deal with, if not already dealing with. So I'm wondering, what's the biggest one or two solutions that could be started in a SIDS country that might prove to be useful for larger places, and especially in the context of COP31 coming up? Is there anything that that a SIDS could do within the next year or two that could be exportable if it's successful?
From the labor perspective, I mean, one that comes, and actually, I like what you said in terms of it. It's to me sometimes it's just shining light on what's already happening, and SIDS, because of this canary effect, sometimes have fabulous solutions. And honestly, it is the lack of visibility in the international space that sometimes we don't give due accord and recognition to the power of locally led solutions. So for me, within the Caribbean, one of the Commonwealth states, and I think it might be two, they had a previous panel. I think it was you who brought up the issue of is it 3 in every 4 are men in the green?
4 to 5 during the day.
Oh my goodness, 4.
Sorry.
To tackle, and a lot of the things in the energy systems are also down to cultural and, associations. Within one of the Commonwealth Caribbean islands, the government working with others had this fabulous program where they were looking at converting ICE vehicles into EVs, and they were deliberate in the approach that it must have women. And I think it was balanced, if not skewed the other way. And the simple, at a ministerial meeting at SIDS, it was so refreshing and powerful to have this country show this as an instance. And I love the previous panel where we're talking about humanizing the issues, and that you're seeing it is a young woman side by side next to a young man retrofitting a vehicle with the undercarriage. I mean, that's one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen in terms of encouraging, barriers around the technology or the issues around gender in certain industries. Simple things like that, if we're able to really give much more light to, would be fantastic. And I am sure there are more examples, but this one just sort of instantly stood out. Again, great strong, I think.
So thank you so much for your comments, for your insights. I just want to pick up on what Johnny was saying from LinkedIn, just on data points. You said that young people are going to be going through a lot of career transitions and thinking about how to deal with that and support that. But I'm also thinking young people have multiple positions at once now, unpaid and paid. I'm thinking, so I represent Climate Talk, our CEO has a part-time job and then also basically leads this organization unpaid. So I'm wondering, how do you think this will be supported? And also, in terms of experiencing multiple roles at once, do you think this will influence cross-sector collaborations? And what do you think that the implications of that on cross-sectoral collaboration?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like we already see Gen Z workers, they're much more likely to have side hustles, second jobs, things that they are breaking out doing on their own. Particularly actually over the last year as the labour market's been much tighter, there haven't been as many job opportunities. There's been, I think, in some ways that's kind of stimulating more entrepreneurship. And I think that spirit is really something that keeps me inspired because within Gen Z, and I feel like there is just so much. I think my generation has grind culture, but they've got like this very entrepreneurial culture and mindset, and they're very open to new ideas, and just taking something from idea to actual reality. I think AI is a massive help there as well. Like the barriers to being able to take something from the thought to a solution or a company is so much less than it used to be. So I think there's going to be a whole wave of innovation and inspiration comes with people seeing it.
Thank you. I'd love to open it up to any of the other panelists as well.
Yeah, please.
I think the issue of unpaid contributions by the youth really in itself deserves a little bit more thought and focus on how we can effectively support this aspect of it. Because unless you have that, your ability to meaningfully participate in many fora is very constrained. So I think, we ourselves are trying to think a little bit more deeply about how we can support the CSET youth group as an example, because this issue is very live and present for many of the young persons who are contributing extremely a lot of their own time and effort, and it's only through passion that it's keeping going, and that's not really sustainable. And it's not also doing justice to the great ideas and power that exist amongst you all here. So I think this is perhaps something for yourselves to really be thinking about how that issue is also addressed. Again, working together, with lots of others in the system. How do we tackle that? And I think financing is not just in terms of participation, etc., but it's ensuring that you also get access to the other skills that can help you do this even more effectively. So I think for me, it's always an issue of resourcing, and if it's always the element, which is what exists today, where you have to basically fight for at every element. We need to create an international ecosystem, and it does exist to some extent, but perhaps a little bit more on this whole issue of adequate resourcing so that representation is meaningful.
If I was to just jump off your point, I think adequate resourcing so that representation is meaningful is spot on. I also would like to add that I think we also need to have a little bit of a systems and cultural shift. I think when it comes to young people, our work, our passion, and our expertise is not really valued to the extent that it should be. Because I think when it comes to young people, there's always this thought that young people are doing their time, but it seems as though when we have like expert advisors who work on a project, they are always valued in terms of like monetary compensation, but for some reason that doesn't seem to translate just as yet to young people who give their times and their skills and their thoughts, their passion and their ambitions to projects. So I think that we also need to start valuing the work of young people, valuing their expertise, knowing that, whether you are 19 years old and are speaking from lived experience, or whether you are 39 years old and have industry experience, both aspects, both experiences are just as valuable, and both need to be valued. And valuing necessarily means monetary compensation in addition to greater resourcing and upskilling. I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but I think this is something that I'm so passionate about, because I do think that Gen Z do a lot of side hustles, but I would like to think that there's a world that exists where that's not necessary if we were valued for our contribution.
Anyone?
Hi, this question is for Nadira mainly. Since you mentioned small island developing states, they have, right now the data says that a lot of developed or the global north countries kind of outsource their emissions to these global south or the small island developing states, and to avoid this, EU and stuff have come up with CBAM, and certain policies are coming up, but this is not universal throughout the world. So, do you have any ideas of some policies or something that can be made universal, at the same time kind of helping out these global south or the small island developing states? I'm sorry if it's quite irrelevant to the topics that we were speaking earlier.
Yeah, I think that that's a very broad question, and comes to the heart of what really is a just energy transition. And for me, I personally always prefer to use an inclusive and equitable energy transition, because we first then would begin with, and for me it's very much broader than SITs, because LDCs in these developed countries structurally have the same issues as SIDS. And more broadly even, the entire continent of Africa. When we look at today, when we look at the world's carbon budget, more than 3/4 of it has already been consumed. And how and where has that been consumed? When we look at the historical emission profile, it is the advanced and wealthy countries. And we're fairly familiar with this. So Africa as an entire continent has contributed less than 3% of global cumulative emissions. SIDS are negligible. In my view, SIDS and LDCs have not contributed. It's 0.05%, I think. So when we look at what really is a just energy transition, and by the way, SIDS and LDCs, most vulnerable already on the front lines of climate, and tend to have some of the most ambitious plans when it comes to energy transition. And yet still, they are the ones, every time that there's a climatic event, you wipe off easily 50% to sometimes 200% of GDP, one climate event, and they're being hit by them now multiple times. So this is a very large issue in the heart of, we have climate negotiators here, etc. So it's a very, very broad issue which touches so many different things. I mean, I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation, but I think the framing of the issue is very important. And I think something for the youth to consider is really how you yourselves look at this from an equity perspective and an intergenerational equity perspective. Because it is similarly, the young people of the world have not contributed to getting us into where we are, and you will be faced with dealing with the consequences much more than anyone else. So I think there is something here as well in terms of changing the narrative on the youth to really an issue of equity, which I think has a lot of value in looking at this. And also, to your point, I agree with you with respect to the issue on valuing expertise. Just as we heard from the example in Gambia, so much fantastic things are being done because you all are living it much more than anyone else, but also you have much more creative solutions than the rest of us. And it's about how do we tap into that to be very meaningful.
Thank you so much. The panel was fantastic and the message was really clear. Cross-sectoral collaboration integrations are effective changes that comes in sector level, quality over quantity, right? Green jobs, diverse voices needed as we see 25% increase in women forces. And also skill sets to be embedded when we need to be a real shift, and it has to be targeted with a real talent from the very young age. Workforce is really important, but also across sectoral collaborations. So right now, we have a special gift from our side to someone very special. We could request my colleague Marcha to come and give 2 minutes of our lovely message.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marcia on behalf of European Engineers and Universal Energy Work Group. So thank you for your attention so far. Before we move forward, we would like to take a very special moment to express our heartfelt thanks to the Commonwealth and the CSET youth team, especially Nadira and Josie, for giving us this space, this platform, and most importantly, for believing in the purpose behind the London Clean Energy Roundtable. For us, this is not just an event, this is the beginning of a yearly platform for collaboration, dialogue, and collective action, bringing people, institutions, young leaders, policymakers, civil society, and partners together for the greater cause of a just and clean energy future. Nadira, your support has meant a lot to us. You helped make this space possible, and through that, you have helped create a platform where voices, ideas, and partnerships can grow beyond today. So if I can call up Manjit, please. On behalf of our entire team, we would like to present this small token of love and appreciation to you. As a gesture of our gratitude, respect, and continued collaboration, thank you for standing with us, supporting us, and for being part of this journey. Thank you.
And also our awards are not clean energies, clear energies, just because it should be transparent, people-centric, and individually diversified as well. So that's why we call it Clear Energy Pioneer. Thank you. So we'll move it for the next panel within 10 minutes, but thanks a lot for the speakers, special jobs as well for running the entire panel. Thank you so much, really, I appreciate that.
Welcome to London, where the future
Just a TV screen. Something awkward keeping it The party seems to be going down very quick as well. I'm just seeing sure cities ugly the company yeah, no, of course. Just rubbing.
I'm sure you do this.
That's a different question.
Okay, everyone. Hi. Can I have your attention back, please? We are coming towards the end of this, and we have one more panel to go. We've got a lot of amazing speakers on this panel, so if I could please request everybody to take their seats. There's going to be a reception after this, so we can definitely make use of that space to network. Okay, cool. So next session, our last panel is a youth panel, and I think that is also the key agenda of Commonwealth here, how we can give youth a platform for us to make sure that energy transition is also quite just. So for this youth panel, we've got, thanks, Ajika. No, it's okay, it's okay. Well, for the last panel, we have got our key chairperson, Leila Hasanova. We've got our moderator, Alicia, Nadeem, no, and then we've got Gurdeep Singh, who is not here just yet. And we've got Shante, Samson, and Ushika. Please join us.
Hello everyone. This is actually my first time speaking as a moderator, so please. Okay. So I just want to really quickly give you a really swift rundown of what we have been speaking for the previous two panels with our very, very lovely guests. Now, this youth-focused dialogue creates a platform for young leaders, youth constituencies, innovators, research civil society organizations, and global South representatives to share priorities for the future of clean energy transition. And this panel, this specific panel, is designed as an open and cross-sector conversation connecting youth priorities and broader implementation discussions that are going to be taking place across LCER. The main kingpin area of this session I would like to include are 5 very pivotal points. So it's going to be youth leadership in clean energy transition, access to implementation opportunities, global South and equity perspectives, innovation and entrepreneurship, which I believe is one of the most pivotal aspects because nowadays, if you're looking at people who are like in younger generations, Gen Z, now they're actually moving from traditional jobs to being much more open to entrepreneurship and business-like ownership as well. And last but not least, it is cross-sector collaboration and participation pathways, which is again being repeated with this panel. Our chairperson, Leila Hasanova, who had been the presidency youth climate champion for 9, I would ask her to give us a concluding reflection on the Discuss Clear Energy Initiatives, Youth and Workplace Engagement.
Okay, yeah. It's a pleasure to be here, and I know that the heat and the sun and the environment, everything all together, it's very hard to come and commit, but we're here, and I'm also proud to be a part of this conversation as well. Although my mandate ended recently in Brazil because the presidency Youth Climate Champion mandate lasts for 2 years. But we have been doing extensive work in the meaningful youth engagement with the colleagues from Municipal Secretariat, and I've been working with the next presidency Youth Climate Champions from COP30 and COP31 to advance this legacy and to hand over the projects and all the commitments that we did at during my term in 2024 and 2025. We young people are often described as the leaders of tomorrow, and there are so many nice headlines, pictures, and posts, which I do love, but I find sometimes not realistic because we're not leading the tomorrow, we're leading today. We need to change now, And we are doing that change. We are now implementing the projects, the adaptation plans, the implementation plans all together, because if it's not us, then the push is not there. Yes, parties come together every year in November. Yes, they agree to many things. But from where do they hear the demands? What are the demands of children and youth and many stakeholders in the process? From us, from those who are active in the field. And across communities, businesses, research institutions, constituencies, young people we are developing solutions. And as someone who has had the privilege of serving as COP29 BYCC, I have witnessed firsthand the incredible expertise, the creativity and determination that young people bring to climate and energy discussions. When I entered the climate sphere, if I call it that way, I was very new to the discussion, but in the meantime, I was very surprised of seeing so many young people and children being active in the field and trying their best, and not always with a salary, no, without any paycheck, just for the passion that they have for this job and for the commitment that they have for this work that they're doing. So today's conversation comes at an important point for all of us, and the clean energy transition presents tremendous opportunities, not only to reduce the emissions and strengthen the energy security, but also, as it was discussed previously at the panels, it creates new job opportunities, that it fosters innovation and supports the sustainable development goals. However, these opportunities will only be fully realized if us, young people, have equitable access to education, the relevant skills, development, financing, and leadership pathways. And without accessible and inclusive finance, not anything of what I've listed recently will be possible. Many youth-led clean energy solutions will just remain ideas on papers, and that's it. And the discussions on climate finance that actually advanced during COP29 in Baku are directly linked to enabling us young people, innovators, entrepreneurs, engineers, and communities to simply participate in, to not simply participate in and benefit from the clean energy transition, but also be a real part of it. And my hope is that this discussion will not only identify the challenges, but also we can actually come together with practical ideas and partnerships and policies for the clean energy transition moving forward. Thank you, and good luck to the panelists.
Thank you for that great discernment, allowing previously made astute points raised together in a very collective and manifold voice. So now on to a very lovely panelist. I would like to ask you a few questions. So we have talked about the barriers. Yes, we have talked about implementations. But how would you say, specifically for young people as they're leading future, how would you create more opportunities in different sectors regarding this issue?
So I'll just introduce myself quickly. So my name is Ashika. I'm volunteering for Climate Talk. We've had a lot of discussions about paid work. So just to emphasize that it's a youth-led organisation, and we work to make climate policy digestible, and so that speaks to the barriers that young people face. But it's entirely volunteer-led, and so it's an international organisation. It's about collaboration, but I think sorry. Your question again.
It was like, how would you specifically create opportunities for young people in this sector?
Yeah, definitely. So I think in terms of opportunities, again, so this is about engagement and breaking up the echo chamber of the UNFCCC jargon. And UNFCCC is an acronym in itself that a lot of people don't know. And speaking from my own experience, I used the Climate Talk resources to understand COP and all of the different negotiation tracks. And so breaking out the echo chamber in terms of people that aren't already engaged in climate action and bringing it down to their lived experience at personal level. And so translating kind of top level policy with young people who are living the experiences of the climate crisis now differently across the world.
I think it's an opportunity to get people into the conversation. And again, speaking from the perspective of Climate Talk, it has a very kind of career-focused aspect as well. So trying to bring in the intergenerational equity aspect to the stages of 18 to 35, which I've spoken about this before, but I think this is a particularly evolving period of time, and for people living in this cohort now, juggling multiple positions, I think it's a very particular unique case of opportunity making and taking. Education is a really important tool in order to engage people within the bubble and also outside of it.
That's actually a really astute point that you made, because nowadays raising awareness is actually bereft of it. There's not enough awareness being made, and that can be only done by education, I believe, in most aspects. Thank you so much. Shante, I would ask you that what support systems are needed for long-term youth leadership and initiatives in your regard?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the team at the London Clean Energy Roundtable for inviting me to this conversation. My name is Shante Sampson. I'm a development professional working on my country's national development plan. In addition to that, I'm the Commonwealth's National Youth Ambassador to the Commonwealth, so I also bring the Commonwealth Youth Council's perspective to this conversation and the Bridge Commons. So your question is how can we facilitate long-term
support
systems? I think that we have to be intentional about leadership development. I think we have to consider building ecosystems and pipelines. And so, as she has spoken about, education is the beginning of it. And then we need to have opportunities for internships, fellowships, technical training. And then that pipeline also needs to extend and lead into job opportunities. And so I think a lot of times in the youth leadership space, I think the panelist earlier, she spoke about it, it is driven by shared passion and shared volunteerism. But we also need to look further and start to build an entire ecosystem and a pipeline that allows it to go beyond just consulting with youth into having a pathway for them to continue in these spaces or in leadership roles over the long term. In addition to this, I also think we also need to recalibrate what also is a leader. I think a lot of times people just look at those that are front facing or those that are advocates in the clean energy space and the climate space. These are also young people who can negotiate, right? They don't necessarily have to be the youth advocate, but they are negotiating. These are the entrepreneurs that are starting businesses. These are many different people that may not get the recognition, the speaking opportunities, but they are also leading as well too. So not just investing in those that are, front facing, they can speak well, they can articulate themselves well, but those that are also a part of the implementation ecosystem as well.
Thank you so much for that great insight. One point that actually really stuck with me nowadays that I'm still finding my way through is internships, you said. It's when you're looking for internship, employers are not giving internships to young people because they need experience. And from our point of view, we crave that experience, but there's lack of opportunities for us. So I believe, yes, there should be internships and much more wider opportunities for every background, every nationality, and every race to be there. Just like as a panel, I would like to ask that finance is a very, very big sector that is actually making us withdrawn from multiple occasions. So what financing barriers are preventing young innovators and entrepreneurs from scaling climate solutions? And how can you successfully unlock these access to the capital funds?
Okay, so this will take a question. So when we think about young people have many brilliant ideas, but as you say rightfully, there are financial barriers that prevent these ideas from moving to implementation. Traditional financial institutions, when they think about young people, they see us as a risk. Maybe we don't have the collateral that is needed to qualify. Maybe we don't have the long-term credit history that they ask for, or any other thing that they can think of to say, this is a risk, this is too risky, and we're not going to invest in it. As it relates to governments or other institutions, they also maybe have grant programs as well too. However, these grants or seed funding, they're usually small. And so as a result, many young people can't move the idea. They get it off the ground, but it isn't to a point where they can actually commercialize it. And so we find ourselves kind of in this middle where we're able to get it started, get the concept going, but not enough time for us to actually commercialize it because the funding is so small or the funding isn't given at all. And so I think that is where development banks can step in providing concessional financing. But it also takes a multi-stakeholder approach that needs to get over these barriers. The government, they have to create the policy environment. The development banks, they have to consider what are the development priorities, and even if the private sector might overlook this idea, let's test it, understanding that climate innovation and climate resilience is a long-term horizon, and so we can't just think short-term or small amounts of money because it has to be tried, tested, and proven. So I think that's what I would say.
Thank you so much. Can I also just jump in there as well? So I'll be offering kind of a bottom-up perspective on this. I know we spoke on that earlier. So again, Climate Talk is a volunteer-led organization, but obviously for in order to kind of carry out the work, grants are required. I had my first experience trying to pitch Climate Talk and see where funders' values align with Climate Talk in order to push our work forward. So covering COP conferences, making sure that our volunteers are then compensated for their work. And I think based on, again, my kind of grassroots campaigning experience, I'd say there's definitely a freedom in terms of being able to do things voluntarily, relying on self-motivation, and community well-being definitely is something that really helps keep movements sustained and going forward. But I do think it speaks to a larger issue of kind of like a tension between funding and making sure things are aligned, and if funding is attached to all these kind of clauses and conditions. So yeah, I just wanted to point out kind of like a paradox maybe between the funding that's available and accessing it, and the reliance on kind of self-motivation, and where those two might end up being able to intersect properly.
Thank you so much. Also, like taking this thought forward, I would like to ask that how can governments, like you said, multi-sectorial, public, private, they need policies that are made by mainly the government, yeah? And what do you suppose or suggest that development banks and the private sector co-invest in youth climate innovations beyond small grants and competition? How would you propose that to be put forward as a policy?
Yeah, I definitely think that it's a collaboration. Again, you have the government sector that must consider what are their national development goals. In small island developing states, especially in the Bahamas, we say climate change is a number one foreign policy, so we understand that resilience is important to our national development in the case of hurricanes. And so first identifying that this is a development objective or this is something important, and then putting in place a national policy strategy to do so. And then you have the development banks or other multilateral institutions that are, looking into these things and seeing how they can align, how they can provide the concessional finance, blended finance, or other opportunities. And then you have the private sector who may have the other investment money, the technical expertise. And so all of this, nobody should be operating in silos. Everybody should understand that we all have a whole society approach that we call it a part to play in moving towards this development goal and building this resilience. And so the faster we understand, this isn't just the government's responsibility, this is everyone's responsibility, the faster we can collaborate in order to unlock the necessary funding that is needed or to remove some of the financial barriers that exist. And again, also just understanding that this is a long-term game. This is a long-term game, and so you can't give up because the first pilot project didn't work in addressing this challenge that we've seen and wanted to finance.
Any more thoughts?
I'll something. I just want to come foreground first. There was a report that was commissioned by the UK government, came out the press release came out through, or the information came out through an FOI eventually, and it basically framed the climate crisis as a national risk. And I personally don't think it gained enough traction. And it's the first time that the climate crisis was posed as a national security risk, leading to mass migration, even possible nuclear war, and it recognised interdependencies between the UK and further afield bilateral collaborations, and our kind of reliance on other ecosystems that are not just contained within borders. And so I think it speaks to what you were saying about long-term thinking in terms of government. And obviously, if we're thinking long term, thinking about young people who are going to be agents throughout the workforce. And so I think definitely, again, this was spoken earlier about institutionalizing young people, which is not homogeneous cohort or anything. Again, young people age up to the system. Institutionalizing the role of young people into, for example, you have to proceed processes, and we can see this change happening already. And also, I just want to say the NEC Youth Clause. I think there was a report recently where it was Care About Climate Mission 2025 and also the We Are Family Foundation. And this clause, their analysis says that this clause has been kind of taken up by 42% of countries already. And I think that's positive progress, but it's still not enough. But again, back to the kind of institutionalization of this into our systems will have trickle-down effects.
I actually love both of the panels' insight. I just hope that this can be implemented in the real life as well. Now, a closing question that I would love to direct towards Lela would be that if we meet again at COP31, what tangible change would success look like for young people in the clean energy transition, according to you?
Thank you so much for the question and really great discussion. Points that actually echo what we think about on a daily basis during our work. Well, when we meet at COP31, the tangible results that I would love to see, of course, is not say no to tokenistic participation of young people, because we've seen a lot of young people participating and funded by companies just for the sake of them reporting at the end of the process, at the end of the year, that we did this number and that number. For those people, yes, it's a great initiative to fund young people. It's amazing and it's very helpful. But before funding those young people to participate in such big conferences as COP, you need to develop their skills. You need to get them ready for that roller coaster, which is taking place at COPs. Because for a young person, for me, honestly, it wasn't an easy experience. It's a hard one. And there are so many challenges in the role of presidency youth climate champion. There are so many expectations that you have to face. And I can imagine myself as a young negotiator participating in the process, a delegate from a country or from any company, and etc. It's hard because you can get lost in the process, but when you have the proper skills and knowledge, you can actually be a great add-on to the process. And I hope to see that at COP31.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that great insight. And I would say that most people, I mean, actually, everyone here is young, right? No one is old. And I feel like this applies to everyone in this room and also out there. Thank you so much. I would like to wrap up the session now. If there is any more questions from the audience, please come forward.
I've got one, but I don't want to hear from me in this. Okay, so this question is especially for kind of everyone, but also about the Caribbean Development Bank in particular, which is some places like OECD has recommended this. I think the U.S. Small Business Administration has suggested using acting as the backer for loans for entrepreneurial efforts, and so only if the loan fails do they have to contribute money. Is this something that could be useful, in the Caribbean or for cities, or what factors would prevent that from being successful support for young or sustainable initiatives and businesses?
Thank you so much for your question. I think, so speaking from the perspective of the Caribbean Development Bank, I'm not formally employed with them, but I have worked on some projects with them, being a part of their Future Leaders Network. I think in their new strategic plan, I think there are three things. One is youth, the other is climate, and then the other is stronger institutions. And so as a result, I would say that they have a focus on both youth and climate. So I can foresee that potentially being an approach that is taken. Because again, this is a long-term horizon thing. Not everything is going to get off the ground initially. So I can potentially see that being an approach that's taken. In addition to that, I know that the Caribbean has been experimenting with a lot of different innovative things in the climate space, especially loss and damage and all of these things. For example, when Hurricane Melissa happened in Jamaica, Jamaica had this innovative insurance scheme where they're going to get like a big payout because of the facility that was put in place. So yeah, I think the Caribbean is experimenting with different ways because we are at the front line of this. In the Bahamas, we say that this is existential to us. In I think a couple of years, 20, I can't remember the exact year, it says that we are going to be fully underwater, in contrast to other Caribbean countries that has maybe a bit of hills or something like that, we are totally flat. And so the Bahamas and Barbados, they are looking into what adaptation looks like, what climate innovation looks like, what climate finance innovation looks like. So I wouldn't discount it.
I have a question too. So that directs to Lena specifically because we've been working with the youth since long time and also in the UICC, COP29. What is the most pressing challenge that you find for the youth? Because I can say as a youth who's been working in this space, the complexification of narratives and how the policies are, the jargons of UNFCCC, things are very simple, like if I want to go to the kitchen and have the food, we have the specific ingredients, put it there, we have the food. But also, the UNFCCC has different kind of levels and then working groups and this kind of stuff. You also work with the NAMU and fantastic work. We really want to know as well about that. But what exactly you can tell that the youth should implement so that we can complexify ourselves and we don't afraid of the jargons and narratives and we can be inside the politics, the negotiations, and also to understand then how to change them rather than just sit in the outside and being an observer.
Thank you so much, Sakat, for the question. That's what I've been working on for 6 years already. And I've been working with young people in my hat as the chairperson for the non-aligned movement youth organization. We are 121 member states, and the organization unites youth from 121 member states. It's very hard for us youth, the young people, to be understood, but it's not hard for us to understand the process. It's never hard. I mean, if we open now, it's actually very easy. You open the AI tools and you get to understand everything. You sum up this and that, you get the full knowledge. And we have the potential. Actually, the problem appears when you do not ask questions. I think even with the bureaucracies of the UN processes, if you do not ask the relevant questions, you will not get the relevant answers. And that's what I've been facing with my colleagues from NAMU as well. We have national chapters representatives across the globe. And why they make the process even better because they ask so many questions and they push a lot for the process, for anything, for any policy inside the organization to work. And that actually, yes, it triggers me sometimes as I lead the organization, but it makes me realize that that's the magic of the youth work. We ask questions, we do the impossible, and we make sure that whatever we do at the end has an impact. And we don't do it for nice shots and etc. But we implement our projects, the capacity building trainings, and many other things that we do in our daily work. So I think the barrier is not just not knowing, but the barrier is here with not wanting to know and not wanting to ask the relevant questions and to challenge the opponent. That's it, probably. Thank you.
Well, thank you for bringing that AI and also like to decomplexify things. This question is for everyone here because we want to know from our specialists as well that in the era of misinformation and disinformation, the problem is not in the information, the problem is abundance of information and the fact checks, right? And when we go for any kind of data or statistics, we get several data and statistics, where to go, what to do, and what exactly the data we should follow. That is the problem all the time, most of the time. So for all of you, just because you've been working in several sectors and documentations, the governments, what would be the preferred way to follow according to you so that we can decomplexify, but also to understand what is fact checked and to mislead ourselves to just not to mislead ourselves and not to guide ourselves towards miscommunication, because according to the Economic Times, miscommunication and discrimination is the top thing that will be happening until 2030. So how to prevent the youth from those two barriers?
Yes, I can just quickly. I think the challenge is, or I think that we shouldn't primarily rely on AI to be our primary source of information. I see it as something that can enhance, that can summarize, that can make you understand things quicker. But the challenge is when you primarily rely on AI, because again, it's subject to hallucination, it's subject to the biases of the people that created the systems. Knowing that, especially let's say in a small island developing state context, a lot of these systems are imported and it doesn't accurately reflect what it is that we're living through. So I don't think that AI substitutes for actually reading the reports or reading the books or finding knowledge in the traditional way. However, you can use it to summarize, let's say, a scientific article that you are reading. And even sometimes then, they might say something wrong as well. So using it as enhancement instead of your primary crutch, I think that helps you not to be misinformed and not to spew disinformation or misinformation because you were inaccurately guided. Yes.
Yeah, I will build on the AI, bringing the AI into this discussion. I think, I'm speaking from my personal opinion, I think, again, over-reliance on AI language is so important when we're talking about how we're framing climate change and the climate crisis. And just from personal observations, I find sometimes that over-reliance on it starts to narrow down the conversation because there's a particular way of talking and the rhetoric comes across well. So, for example, someone is kind of using it to defend their argument. It on the surface level, it looks quite compelling, but if you kind of bring it down, there's a lot of patterns that kind of come over and over, and I think it's a place where an echo chamber can kind of form. And also, I think AI is an interesting thing to think about in terms of a lot of people think of it as some kind of cloud, but it has a physical manifestation, and I think that is analogous to the climate crisis, kind of bringing lots of abstract concepts together and thinking about how it actually has a tangible reality. And speaking in terms of my kind of climate journalism background, I noticed that on the board I'm down as a journalist for my college newspaper. So yeah, I'm very passionate about narratives and communication and creativity in terms of the speaking about the environmental crisis. And I think youth can bring a lot of creative solutions, as you said, a lot of momentum and ideas. And it's something that, again, community collaboration really fosters. And lastly, I spoke already about kind of having multiple different hats, but for my master's research, there's a lot of emphasis on citizen-led science. It's just kind of putting a lived experience and citizen-led data initiatives into the picture in terms of valid evidence to inform decision-making. I think that's a really important step, and particularly when it's youth-led, people with not enough kind of resources or understanding of how the processes formally work. That might help to bridge the gap.
Well, what is AI? AI actually gets information from us. Yes, it's a database. It has a lot of information, misinformation as well, but it gets the information from us. So, like, we feed that. Whatever we put there, it goes to the system. We don't know where it goes yet, but it's a security issue as well. I'm really concerned about that, by the way. So I think we choose what we want to digest as an information. Do we want, like, when we open the social media, do we want that to jump into our brain or no? We are at that age and point where we can understand that this information is useful and this is not, and I'll just scroll it and I don't want to know if what's happening. Thanks, I'll just ignore it. So we can do that, but misinformation is everywhere, and we're facing it during the political challenges, during the environmental crisis. You can get some information that this or that is happening in another country or in an area, but it might be not real. I think what is important here is, once again, to choose your own, plate of information. And make sure to use AI less, because I think at some point in 5-6 years we'll have less kindergarten kids with critical thinking. It's really bad because I go back to my bachelor years and I remember that there was no AI, like obviously 2017 to 21. I think by the end of my bachelor's there was already some tools. But we were so lucky to use our brains and critical thinking and come up with so many excellent projects and papers and policy recommendations, which AI can never come because it's not a human brain. So it's in our hands, and day by day there are many, many challenges that we need to face, and maybe that's one of them as well. But I think we definitely can tackle that as well. Thanks.
So thank you so much for the panel. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a question for you all, which is, in your respective contexts and thinking of the young people that you interact with on a daily basis, what does the COP31 moment need to deliver for young people?
I can take that. We've had a similar question before, and I think once again it's going to be meaningful participation of young people, not bringing like hundreds and thousands of young people together just for the sake of bringing them together, but equipping them with the proper knowledge in advance so that those young people can bring their amazing expertise and knowledge into the process. That's my
Yeah, I think I echo her sentiment. I think I would like to see more young people, like she said, not just attending the conferences, one, getting the capacity building before, but two, being young people that are in the implementation phase. So for example, I know that here at the Commonwealth, a few weeks ago, they did these multilateral negotiations training for young people. So at COP, I would like to be able to point to something tangible and say, hey, this young person underwent this training on multilateral negotiation, and this young person is a part of their country's official delegation as a part of the negotiations, contributing to the negotiations. Or this young person, we have built the capacity before, and now they are not just here as a youth representative, but they are here as a climate entrepreneur in the space. Or this young person is engaged in policy making. They have contributed to the national development strategy around climate. So more than just being there, being present as a youth representative, more than just consultation, but moving on to institutionalization, moving on to implementation. So that's what I would say from my part.
Yeah, and also just speaking of young people as part of the general populace, I think so. In my experience tracking the just transition negotiations on, I was very concerned about the kind of pushback against science. So I think speaking on behalf of young people who are kind of inheriting the climate crisis, I think what would be just and equitable is to see no regression back on things that have already been agreed, and understanding the integrity of science and understanding different forms of knowledge that are equally valuable. I think that's definitely something I really want to see at COP31 and also beyond.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Just on a closing note, I would like to say that the expected outcomes of today's discussion would be the youth-driven recommendations ahead of COP31, the stronger intergenerational collaboration pathways, and last but not least, long-term engagement opportunities within LCR initiatives. Thank you so very much for coming.
Thank you for your cooperation. Although it was the first time, it felt like you've been doing it for the 10th.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone. I'm just going to do a quick final remarks, and you have reception right afterwards. So if you have time, I know it's been a long session. So if you have time, please do stick around, network with people who are here in the room. So just a little bit of a closing remark. I'm going to let Sagat also take over and do a short statement. But if you could click on to the next slide. Like I said in the beginning, this LCR was born in one person's head on a very cold January morning, and he just called me up. I don't know, in the middle of work, and I was like, "What is this, Sagat? What do you want from me?" Okay, I'm in the middle of work. He's like, "You know what? I've got an amazing, brilliant idea," and then he explained everything to me in 2 minutes, and I said, "You know what? Let's do it." Of course, we have gone through a lot of ups and downs and lots of rough edges, but I'm quite happy that we're standing here today. And for an event like this, which takes people and organizations a whole year to plan ahead, we did it in under 4 to 5 months. And that, I just want to say, for everybody sitting here, please give everyone a huge round of applause for that. Thank you. And this would not have happened without our key partners that you can see here on our screen. I'm not going to go through all of them, but each member, and it's not like all these organizations, we had like too much of manpower doing this job. We had few people from each of these organizations who are equally passionate like us, who have come together and make this a success. If you could click on to the next slide, please. I just want to say this is our leadership team. We've got Sagat here in the room. It's me, and definitely Anirudh Jagannath, who could not be here today. I know you are watching, Anirudh, and I just want to say we had so many logistical changes and things happening in the background today, and somebody who was sitting there in the back end making things happen while things went on smoothly here is Anirudh. He's based in India. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today in person, but he is our backbone, I must say. While we are doing things here on ground, managing people, logistics, everything, there are things happening in the back end as well, and Anirudh has been our backbone. So a huge round of applause for Anirudh. We also have Josh, Angelos, and Ashraf. I think Josh you met in panel 2 today. Those were then at the parliament yesterday. You must have met Angelos as well, and Ashraf too. So these 3 people are also part of our leadership team, but they've come in with specific skill sets. Negotiating with Commonwealth, with Parliament, with a lot of other contacts, and they've come in with specific skill sets. So we also appreciate them for being with us. I think that's it. And also special thanks to IDGCA, Indonesia, Carbon Trading Youth Association. They were our specific outreach partner. They have also put in a lot of late nights to manage time zones because their entire team is based in Indonesia. And I know that we saw our amazing Alicia today, who did her first panel session, but yeah, she's also been a great help. And thanks, Gokul too. There are a lot of people working in the background, not able to name all of them. I know you all are watching, so thank you so much. We could not have done this without you. I'm just going to hand it over to Sagat now.
Thanks a lot to Shraddha as well. All the time she picks up my call and say yes. That okay, let's do it. And as she said, it was an idea that came in. We did implemented a lot of international roundtables and events and everything. I knew that as well from before in COP, in SBs, but never did it specifically in UK, right? With the ministries. So one morning I was just going through that. Why not in UK? Because we're based in UK. Why not to bring in all people under one roof? My jargon was clear, all sectors, one roof, and one solution. So this is what we did, and I'm really, really glad that all of us was one of the main pioneers. And as she said, that one seed is just you need to grow the plant, but you need soil, you need water, and everyone, especially the leadership team, Shraddha, Ashraf, everyone, plus Anirudh. Oh my God, I can't thank him as well more. But yes, thanks a lot. Gokul, thanks a lot. Arshi, thanks a lot. Everyone. And Manjit, she came all the way from Slough, both of the days after the work, so she works with me as well. Thanks a lot, Manjit. And I'm glad to say that it will be a yearly roundtable, and every year you'll see more of the politicians, more of the private sector, public sector, everyone, and it will bring an outcome. We have three outcomes all the time, not just a roundtable that we did and go away. No, we have outcomes like the political package, we have the workforce transition package, and 6 drivers that drives the UK economy. We will release it soon. But also, it's glad that yesterday we had first and foremost LinkedIn. They launched their report, which is UK Green Skill Report. Thanks a lot to everyone. Thanks a lot to Johnny as well and James, who was all the time with us. And of course, we will carry forward the partnership forward as well. So here now, again, I'm saying we launched the Clean Energy Roundtable, which is the London Clean Energy Roundtable under Clean Energy Forum. And we'll see these roundtables in different sectors and different areas and different regions as well. So thank you so much for being with us. And here, we will celebrate with some kind of drinks and networking as well. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm not going to keep you. Yeah, I know, right? I cannot thanks. I don't know. This is really amazing what Cycle has done with AI. We have a song now, so enjoy the song. And yes, please move to the reception area. Josie, okay, yeah. Special thanks to Josie too, by the way. She's been doing everything in the background. She's from Commonwealth, by the way. Thank you, Josie, and thanks to Nadira.
I forgot one thing, very special thing. The youth panel and all the youth importance was given by EYEN, Lisa. She's not well, but still she was sitting from entire, 2 o'clock. So thank you so much, EYN, especially for being our youth ambassadors, and Lisa for helping us connecting all the youths. Amazing. Thanks a lot, really. Thank you.
Let's all please come. I request everybody to come here. We'll all take a picture, and we are done thanking people. I know everyone's like, can I just have a drink? It's so hot. So let's just have a picture, and then we'll go to the reception. Thank you.
Welcome to London, where the future begins. One room, one purpose, many voices within. For the people, for the plan, we gather today. To light up tomorrow, in a clear sky.
Come on, guys, come on. Come on.
From our seats of power, we rise together now.
Now let's say and your coupons for your money as well.
Other than that, I have a huge truck.
Cool. Thank you, photographers.
Yes, I know.
Say energy.
Energy. 1, 2, 3, energy.
Thank you. Okay. Please go ahead to the reception area. Let's go to the reception area and everybody can cool off with the drinks.
I mean, you don't need feed anymore.